Welcome to another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here. For a long time, we've been basically the PFF NFL Draft Show. Now we are back to being the PFF College Football Show, starting off with a banger in the offseason, Dalton. My top 10 returning quarterbacks in college football. We're going to break down my entire top 10 list. You're going to go over some of the guys maybe you think I left off on this list, the order I put these guys in, what do you think about each of these quarterbacks. I'm really excited to get through every position in college football, starting off with the most important one, quarterbacks.
I'm just glad to be back to covering college football, right? Moving forward and into the 2025 season, we're going to have previews and returning lists and units and then team previews coming all throughout the summer. So it's about to be a lot of fun, and you're right, we're starting off with a really good one here.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to remind you guys, we're going to do my top 10 lists for every single position in college football. Later on in the offseason, we'll do my top 10 position units in college football, meaning quarterback rooms, meaning starting quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks, all that, receiving cores, offensive lines, defensive lines, secondaries, all that good stuff. A lot of rankings coming on this channel. Of course, our team previews coming on this channel during the summer as well. Got a lot to cover in this video, in this series, I should say. Drake Holiday in the chat right now. Appreciate our guy Drake. Yeah, it's going to be, I'm really excited for you guys. And listen, want to apologize for yesterday. I was on jury duty yesterday. That's why we didn't go live yesterday. Didn't have jury duty today. Might have it tomorrow, though. That's why we were not live yesterday. But Dalton, here in my top 10 quarterbacks list, it's pretty an interesting group, man. There's a lot of guys coming back to college football. Of course, we lost a few superstars to the NFL draft, like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart, guys like that. But there's a lot of really, really talented guys that could have been maybe first-round picks in this year's draft that decided to go for another year at college football.
Talented for sure, and it feels like, we have these preseason rankings, and even there's been already a lot of speculation about the 2026 NFL draft. But to me, it's a very wait-and-see group of quarterbacks, right? We have a lot of guys who either had a breakout year, their first year starting last year. We had a lot of guys, even certain guys, younger guys like Arch Manning and DJ Lagway got a small sample in, and we saw some good, and maybe a little bit of flaws from guys with inexperience. So I think you're really talking about a group that you have this top 10 list now. It could be very, very fluid. I think a lot of it is really not set in stone until we get deep into the season.
I think this is the earliest stream we've done since we did our 9 a.m. Sunday shows. Drake Holiday said it's so early, but it's not too early to have Sam Leavitt as QB1. I'm not going to spoil where Sam Leavitt is. He will be on this list, though. Another guy, 7-11 in the chat. Shout out PFF all the way here from London. Got some London people in the chat right now, Dalton, as well. But, all right, let's get into my top 10 quarterbacks list. We delayed it long enough. I'll start off with an honorable mention guy, though. Each of these lists I had an honorable mention guy. Dalton, this guy plays in the SEC, is one of the most physically talented quarterbacks in the country, and I think could be one of the top quarterbacks in the draft if he develops a little bit more. I'm, of course, talking about Taylon Green from Arkansas, not Lenora Sellers. I know a lot of people thought I would be saying his name right there, but Taylon Green, man, I was really impressed by what he did this past year. Did not really have high expectations for him going into the year because the year before at Boise State, he only had a 60.2 passing grade. This past year at Arkansas, 79.2 passing grade. He's 6'6", 230 pounds, outstanding arm talent, outstanding mobility as well, 22 big-time throws, tied for the ninth most in the Power 4, 453 rushing yards after contact, were the fifth most in the Power 4. Again, some head-scratching mistakes on tape with 17 turnover-worthy plays, but I think Taylon Green has a physical talent to rise up on this list.
Yeah, I think some of those mistakes include fumbles. If I remember seeing right, he led the Power 4, all Power 4 players with 12 fumbles. And I think the thing for Green on the positive side is getting with Bobby Petrino there at Arkansas as his offensive coordinator. It allowed him to use his strengths to his advantage, right? And the two things I think about are a big arm that can really throw the deep ball, and then you mentioned it, that big 6'6" frame that can run the football and scramble really, really well. So I think, obviously the toolsy guy, like you mentioned in the SEC, everybody's talking about is Lenora Sellers, and we're going to talk about him a lot into the summer and into the season. But Taylon Green had a fantastic season for Arkansas. We honestly thought that situation at Arkansas going into last season wasn't all that great. Maybe coaches would be on the hot seat. Maybe they wouldn't win a whole lot of games. But for them to make a bowl game and for Taylon Green to be the biggest reason for it, and he's coming back for another season, Arkansas's offense could be really dangerous again this year.
Absolutely. Just to remind you guys, these are top 10 quarterbacks in college football, not top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL draft. That's why Lenore Sellers is a spoiler right now. He will not be on this list. If we were doing a top 10 quarterbacks for the draft list, Lenore Sellers would be on the list. This is just a ranking of the top 10 quarterbacks right now in college football going to next year. We got Arizona Jace in the chat saying he's from Australia, big Cardinals fan. He wants Drew Allar, Sam Leavitt, or Garrett Nussmeier to the desert next year. So he wants to replace Kyler Murray. Arizona Jay studs.
That's a story right there in itself, and I'd say it would be something if it was Sam Leavitt right down the road. Low moving costs.
That would be electric. Yeah, GM Walt in the house. Walt always is a big supporter of PFF. Appreciate Walt in the chat. All right, let's get to my number 10 guy, my top 10 quarterbacks in the country. Number 10 is Kevin Jennings from SMU. This is a guy we did not expect to be a starting quarterback in college football entering the year. In fact, Preston Stone, I believe, was one of my top 10 quarterbacks the year before at SMU. Preston Stone lost his job very early on in the year to Kevin Jennings. And Dalton, you and I were like, okay, let's see what this kid's got, because Preston Stone's a pretty good quarterback. Stone is now at Northwestern. Jennings led SMU to the playoff this past year, led SMU to one of their best seasons since they had the death penalty, honestly, back in the 80s, honestly. So 85 passing grade this past year. I was 10th among all quarterbacks in the country, 90.6 passing grade when kept clean as well. Kevin Jennings is a very, very talented arm, capable of making some really absurd off-platform throws. Just got to play a little more under control, and you saw that in the Penn State playoff game. He was a disaster in that Penn State playoff game, and that's a big reason why SMU lost the way they did. He threw 2 pick sixes, I remember, in that playoff game, multiple interceptions as well. But Kevin Jennings, I thought, was really impressive this past year. Yes, the final game for him was not pretty, but the whole year before that was really, really good for him.
Yeah, I mean, there was moments where it was shaky, but honestly, you're talking about a guy who fought through a competition all summer, and even early into the season, the first 3 games of the season, he was rotating with Preston Stone, and now Stone's out to Northwestern, so they brought a veteran behind him, and Tyler Van Dyke, who knows Rhett Lashley well. But this is Kevin Jennings' team, and look, he's got a really good arm despite being undersized, kind of a wiry build, throws on the move very, very well. I think even when he breaks the pocket, even though he's a really good athlete, he looks to throw first before he takes off running, can get involved in the design run game a little bit. But SMU, look, Kevin Jennings is the reason now that they can contend for another ACC title. They just missed out on it last year, and I think that's the biggest thing, like you mentioned, is big games, right? You look at 3 big games where he just had a slew of mistakes. One of them, they won the Duke game where he had, I believe it was 5 or 6 turnover-worthy plays.
Like 6,
the first half of the Clemson game, his mistakes are what put him in the hole early in the ACC title game, and they almost came back to win. And then the Penn State game, obviously, in the cold with the turnover. So I think for Kevin Jennings, what we're going to be looking for is performance in big games, but otherwise he was spectacular, especially considering he didn't become the starter until, the 3rd or 4th game of the season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was really impressed by him. Again, a guy that we were like, okay, let's see what he could do when Preston Stone got benched and Jennings proved us all wrong, I thought, this past year. So really good year from him. I'm excited to see what he could do with the Mustangs next year as well. Number 9, probably the most controversial quarterback in college football right now. That is Nico Iamaleava, now at UCLA. If you look at the article on PFF.com, I wrote this before it all went down in Tennessee, is listed to him at Tennessee, but now he's at UCLA back home in Los Angeles. Obviously, the big story with Nico and his whole family, honestly, is the whole NIL dispute with Tennessee. Led him to miss practice at Tennessee, led Tennessee to move on from him as a quarterback altogether. He transfers over to UCLA as well. With all that aside, though, on the field, Nico is a very talented quarterback. You see right there an 81.7 passing grade this past year. He really started off really slow for Tennessee. In fact, his first 6 games, he had sub-70 passing grades. But in 4 of the final 7 games, he had 75-plus passing grades as well. Led Tennessee all the way to the college football playoff as well. Former 5-star recruit, mentioned before, 81.7 passing grade. It was top 20 in America. 2.5% turnover-worthy play rate, was in the top 30 in the country, even though in that Tennessee offense, so many vertical throws, so usually you're putting the ball in harm's way more. Nico still took care of the football at a very, very good level. Amazing physical tools. I mean, there's been comparisons out there physically to Justin Herbert, right? He's got the size like Justin Herbert, 6'6", the elastic arm, the rocket launcher arm, really good mobility as well. So there is the physical tools there. I am curious now how he looks like going into UCLA, which is a worse situation. UCLA did not make a bowl game this past year. Supporting cast was not very good for quarterbacks last year. Yes, they did kind of rebuild the entire offense through the transfer portal, but there's a lot of unknowns with UCLA right now. The one thing I will say, listen, I think he downgraded going to UCLA in every way. He's making less money than he did at Tennessee. He's going to a worse team than Tennessee. The one thing that is good about him going to UCLA, though, is that he will play probably in a more pro-style offense than Tennessee. That might help out his NFL evaluation a little bit more. But I'm really curious to see how this move goes for Nico.
Yeah, this is an odd situation in a very competitive Big Ten, right? And you mentioned it. He's got all the tools in the world that you could ask for, right? He's 6'5", 6'6". He's got a huge arm. He can move. And I think the things for me that I want to see from Nico are what made him better down the stretch last year was his ability to make more intermediate throws, more underneath throws with accuracy, right? Because you can't just be that guy, and there's another guy or two on this list that we're going to talk about with this, is you can't just be that guy that chucks the ball deep all the time. And I know that's the big thing, is that's how Tennessee's offense is designed, right? They're going to run the football. They're going to take big vertical shots on the go balls, right? UCLA is not going to be like that, and you're not going to be able to be like that in the Big Ten. Big Ten defenses just don't allow you to do that. Cold weather doesn't allow you to just take deep shots all the time. So I'm very curious to see the transition to a little bit more traditional offense, and if he can adjust to the footwork, adjust and keep improving his underneath accuracy. If he can do that, then you're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten who could put up some really big numbers out there at UCLA. But I think that's what it's going to be now is there's going to be some people with intangible questions. There's going to be people with questions about transition to a new offense, questions about his accuracy, just questions about his supporting cast at UCLA, like you mentioned. So it really is a situation with Nico where by the end of the year, he could be on the top 5 of this list.
Oh, absolutely.
By the end of the year, he could be way off this list in a new situation. So I think this is another situation where it's going to be very fluid. I wouldn't call UCLA a dark horse yet in the Big Ten until we see them on the field. But Nico makes them a little bit of an X factor on any given day. When you have a quarterback that talented, we know it's the most important position on the field, you can turn the tide on some things pretty quickly. So it's going to be a fun situation to watch over there.
Just in terms of physical tools, he might be a top 5 quarterback in America.
Oh, yeah.
Just like it's crazy the amount of physical tools he has. I will say, though, we just saw Shedeur Sanders fall to the 5th round, probably for a lot of off-field reasons, maybe some reasons due to his father. I wonder if Nico has the same thing in the NFL.
Only time will tell. He's the one, maybe more than anybody else on this list. We just got to get to the season and see what happens.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nico Iamaleava breaking our producer Eli's heart. Big Tennessee fan behind the glass there. We'll see what Tennessee does this upcoming year. But Nico now going to UCLA from Tennessee. Number 8, though, guy that is staying in the SEC is, I said before, Nico's probably the most controversial quarterback in the country. This guy's not, because I think everyone in the country loves this guy. That's Diego Pavia from Vanderbilt. This guy was just purely electricity this past year for the Commodores. 10th among all quarterbacks in the country with an 85 passing grade, 683 rushing yards after contact. That led all quarterbacks in the Power 4. And I think the most memorable game for him and Vanderbilt, maybe in history, was when they beat Alabama. And in that Alabama game, he had a 92.1 passing grade against the Crimson Tide in that game. And, of course, the electric interview with Alyssa Lang afterwards, or, of course, Trevor Sikkema's fiance. Amazing interview after the game was over there. He won his injunction against the NCAA because originally he was not going to have any eligibility left after this year. But because he played JUCO, they did not count his JUCO years. Before that, he goes to New Mexico State, obviously, after that, and then now goes to Vanderbilt. He has one more year with the Commodores. We'll see if he can do any more magic with Vanderbilt this upcoming year. But Diego Pavia, not only one of those electric quarterbacks on and off the field, but also a really, really talented one as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. A talented passer, like you mentioned, especially vertically, opens things up in a very complex run game that he has to lead, right? And I think what you get in Pavia is like the toughness of an academy quarterback, right? It's kind of like that. Led all Power 4 quarterbacks in yards after contact and missed tackles forced. I mean, that's what you're getting at first, is a dynamic run game centered around him, and it's exactly what it was when he was at New Mexico State. He just brought that same toughness and leadership over. You mentioned the upset over Alabama, a Week 1 upset over Virginia Tech. That was not a game that Vanderbilt was supposed to win, and he just brings that fiery leadership you need at a program like Vanderbilt if they're going to win games consistently. Obviously, we didn't expect much from them going into last year, but we had mentioned, look, if there's one ray of hope, it's if Diego Pavia can play like he did at New Mexico State. So really a fun dual threat quarterback, a really big time toughness as a runner, can vertically throw the football down the field to complement that. Obviously, I don't think has an NFL style of NFL frame or any NFL arm strength or anything like that, but you can certainly see where he is the heart and soul of that team that he's leading in Vandy, and it's going to be another fun season watching him.
Vanderbilt did not have a winning season since James Franklin's final year at the program back in 2013, and they just did under Diego Pavia at quarterback this past year with a 7-6 record this past year. So again, their best record in 11 years because a big reason why it was Diego Pavia and what he could do in his first year with Vanderbilt. Another SEC quarterback here at number 7. That is maybe the most physically talented quarterback in America. And I know some people think he'd be a little higher on this list. I'm still kind of in wait-and-see mode with him, but it's DJ Lagway from Florida. This kid was fantastic this past year. He has fantastic potential, I should say. He was limitless potential at Florida. Top quarterback recruit coming out of high school. Took over from Graham Mercer, who went down with a season-ending injury. He led the Power 4 with an 8.8% big-time throw rate. And on deep throws, he had a 95.6 passing grade. That was the third best in all of college football. Now, why is DJ Lagway not a little bit higher on this list? It's still a little inconsistent right now for the true freshman, now going to be a true sophomore. And of course, you got to expect that, right? He's a true freshman playing in the SEC. On all the other throws besides deep throws, meaning short and intermediate throws, he had a 59.7 passing grade. That was the second worst in the Power 4 this past year. So again, third best in the country on deep throws, second worst in the Power 4 on all other throws. So very hot and cold for DJ Lagway right now. Again, very brutal schedule that Florida played this past year too. So it was a very encouraging freshman year from DJ Lagway. He might have more arm talent than anyone else in college football right now. He's got to fine-tune his footwork right now, got to fine-tune his accuracy. If he does that, this guy could absolutely be the Heisman Trophy winner and the number one quarterback in the country. It's just a little more wait and see, I think, with DJ Lagway right now.
He's the reason we're going to talk about the Florida Gators, right? And their defense, especially their D-line, is getting a little bit better. They've got a stable of weapons, but it all centers around DJ Lagway. And you mentioned it, as much arm talent as any player in the country. And the deep ball, the ball just explodes off his hand. You mentioned the third best deep passing grade in the country, but you mentioned the right thing also on the flaws. It's all in his footwork. There's times when he throws with one foot off the ground. There's times when he throws with both feet off the ground. He can jump throw the ball 50 yards, which is one of the wilder things I've seen. But no, I mean, absolutely, the talent is all there. He just needs the refinement. He's also a good enough athlete to improvise outside the pocket. So I think Lagway, look, is there a little bit of projection here at number 7? Sure. If I was even making a top 10 QBs list right now, I might not have him on there right this second until I see, okay, I need the underneath accuracy. I need the footwork. I need the consistency. Those are big things that I look for from quarterbacks when you're talking about what are they right now. But no question, he's got as much talent as any quarterback in the country. There's a reason he was the number one quarterback recruit last year in the 2024 class. And now, look, he's Florida's ray of hope, right? If they're going to get back into SEC contention, they need him to be the best quarterback in the SEC.
He's really got to fix his footwork. I remember sending you some clips of him where he just he jump throws all the time.
I mean, there's what is it? I think it was the first start he made against, was it Sanford?
Yeah.
And he basically jump throws a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah,
I mean,
crazy,
the ball absolutely, maybe more so than anybody on this list, than Nico or anybody else that we have here, the ball just explodes out of his hand. I mean, he makes 50, 60 yards look easy.
Which is just terrifying to think about if he sets his feet, how far he can actually throw.
Oh, the moments that he does, not even just how far, but how much more accurately.
Yeah.
That's really the big thing for me, is how easy every throw can be on the field and how accurately he could get it there if his feet were actually aligned.
But so much of arm strength for quarterbacks comes from the lower body. He's like throwing with no lower body right now, and he's still throwing at 50, 60 yards down the field. So DJ Lagway, most physically talented quarterback in the country, number one quarterback coming out of high school last year. Again, only a true freshman last year. That's why I put him on this list, because I think he has the talent to be number one on this list after the year is over. But it's why he's number 7 right now. Just got to fine-tune his accuracy, fine-tune his footwork a little bit more, but there's no denying his physical talent, is why he's still top 10 on this list. To answer Walt's question in the chat, DJ Lagway was the only guy on this list that's not eligible for next year. So he is a 2027 prospect, absolutely. Another guy who everyone thinks is going to be a 2027 prospect, but we don't know yet because he is eligible for next year. Another guy's got to prove a lot, though, is Arch Manning at number 6 from Texas. Honestly, this is the hardest one to figure out because I think Arch Manning could absolutely be the Heisman Trophy winner. I think he's right now the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy this upcoming year. Some people might even put him number 1 on this list, but I put him number 6 right now. Just got to prove he could be an elite quarterback in college football. He's only started 2 games in his career against Louisiana Monroe, Mississippi State. But like I said before, he's plus 700 to win the Heisman Trophy right now in DraftKings, which is the betting favorite right now 88.1 PFF grade. That was 13th among all quarterbacks in the country that played at least 200 snaps. He was 16th in big-time throw rate, 16th in turnover-worthy play rate as well. So again, against pretty bad competition, but still, he still played out there for Texas. He was really, really good, and he has more mobility than his legendary uncles, Peyton and Eli, as well. In fact, he kind of runs like his grandpa, Archie Manning, out there. He had 4 rushing touchdowns on only 21 rushing attempts last year, including a 67-yard touchdown from Arch Manning as well. But listen, like I said before, number 6 might be way, way too low for Arch Manning by the end of the year. In fact, if you ask me right now, how many quarterbacks are you taking over Arch Manning to start your team with? I don't know if I'll take any.
No, I would start it with him.
Which is it just makes it so hard though, because he hasn't played enough for me to rank him higher on this list against guys that have actually proven it. But that's why I put him number 6 right now, because I think the top 5 have proven it more. But man, there's so much potential with Arch Manning.
If you were going to make a super gutsy projection pick to be number 1 on this list, it would be Arch Manning. And it kind of makes sense that you have him behind these other 5 guys who we've seen play well for 1, if not 2 years apiece. So, I mean, look, every time you watch him, and I know he's been on the field for just a little over 260 snaps, but every time he's on the field, his process is right, his footwork is tight. You can see the compact release that all of the Mannings have, especially Peyton and Eli, right? And you talk about the mobility. I mean, it opens up everything in Steve Sarkisian's offense, the bootleg game, the option game, any design quarterback run that he wants to go with. We saw him come in as a little more of a rushing threat occasionally last year for Quinn Ewers. So, look, Arch, honestly, I watch him and I just go, look, that's a Manning. You can see it. You can see it in him. That's a Manning that can run, which sounds like an unfair statement. It's a perfect offense for him to be in. You've said it before, arguably the most quarterback-friendly offense in Steve Sarkisian's in the nation. So, look, the more I watch him, the more I have huge expectations for Arch Manning as well. I think he's in for a huge season. Everything about it. And look, we're going to find out week 1 also, and hopefully a game that we're going to be at Ohio State in a rematch of Texas last game right away. I mean, I think you could see spectacular things from him now that he's entrenched as the starter and he got 2 years of seasoning as the backup.
Walt in the chat saying, I've seen enough of Arch. He's got to be number 1. Would you put Arch Manning number 1 if you had to make this list?
Oh, man, I would think about it. I think I would have him at least, top 3.
Okay.
At least there's even when I was going through for starting to think about next year's draft and just scouting these guys for all of our team previews, I think I would have him top 3. I think he's going to be incredible.
So Walt was saying, I think your 5 in the list ahead of him have not proven enough as high-end potential NFL quarterbacks. I want to remind people right now, this is a ranking for college football. This is not a ranking for the NFL draft. In fact, Dalton and I put together our ranking for the NFL draft. You can find it at pff.com. On our big board, Arch Manning is actually QB1 on that ranking for the big board. So I think as a quarterback prospect, Arch Manning is probably number 1. But as a quarterback for college football next year, as of right now, that's why I put him number 6. I think the other guys on this list have done a little bit more.
Just hedging just a little. He could very well end up at number 1, honestly, by the end of the season. I think any of these top 6 probably could end up, maybe even top 7 if you want to include Lagway in that if we get the fundamental improvement. But this is the thing, is this quarterback class for the draft and for college, again, very, very wait and see, because I think a lot of these guys right now are about on the same tier.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I think number 6 is the point where I think I won't get the most hate. I think if I put him number 1, people come at me. If I put him outside the top 10, people come at me. It's like, listen, number 6, I'll be in the middle on this guy for right now. We'll see what happens.
You're just avoiding the noise.
Listen, okay. I've done enough Arch Manning stuff where I got killed on Twitter already. I think this is the safest spot to put him, I think, in this top 10. We'll get to my top 5 on this list in just a second. Before we do that, got to talk with the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does your child's future success look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can help make it easier to achieve with a kids investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric Gerber Life is designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest when they're minors, but a kids investment account allows you to invest on their behalf now, giving their investments more time to grow. It's online. A setting account can take you just 5 minutes. Then you can manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and tutors to music classes. And when they're adults and out on their own, they can use the funds for anything that they need. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. That's meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, let's get to the top 5 on this list. We got some Jake Retzlaff love in the chat right now. He's Mark Allison going, keep my guy Retzlaff off your list again so we can prove you wrong again. I think unfortunately, we are doing that. There he is right there.
This is going to be you, not me this year. And honestly, if we had a top 15, he'd probably be looking at a top 15 placement. It was he's one of the guys who I think about on the borderline who had such a great year last year, and BYU's got so much coming back that maybe by the end of this year he is in this top 10. He'd probably be top 15 for me, though, right now.
Shout out, Jake. If anyone doesn't know the PFF College Football Show lore, Dalton put out a ranking of the all 70 Power 4 quarterbacks, and he had Jake, third to last on that list?
I think he was second to last. He actually remembered better than I did. I thought it was third to last also. But when we talked to him, he made sure that I knew.
Yeah, Jake, if you saw that picture right there, Jake was holding up the phone with the graphic because ESPN asked him, what's your motivation for the offseason right now? He goes, this right here. And obviously had a great year for BYU. We actually had Jake on the show. He was an electric interview. He was an awesome, awesome guy to talk to. He gave Dalton a lot of flack for that list, obviously, and all good fun. Really fun interview. So go check out the Jake Retzlaff interview. Unfortunately, he's not on this top 10 list. He would be a lot higher than whatever 67th Dalton put him on last year, but he's not in the top 10 here. So maybe, again, more motivation for Jake Retzlaff. Maybe he goes out there and wins a Heisman Trophy and the Jake Retzlaff Trophy next year. But my top 5 on this list, at number 5, is Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. So this guy sat on the bench for 3 years in Baton Rouge, and he finally had his chance to start this past year, and he really showed that he had flashes of brilliance as a backup, and he was really good as a starter this past year. The 5th most passing yards in the nation with over 4,000. 7th in big-time throws with 26 big-time throws as well. Now, Garrett Nussmeier, still a little bit of a gunslinger right now. He had 18 turnover-worthy plays. That was in the bottom 20 in college football. Also does not add anything as a rusher, only 93 rushing yards this past year. But he's a tough quarterback. He's fearless in the pocket. He's capable of making almost any throw on the field as well. Again, he's a little bit of a gunslinger right now. And I've seen some comparisons to Tony Romo out there that I kind of like. But I still think Garrett Nussmeier, listen, he's one of the top quarterbacks to know for next year's draft, and I think he's one of the top quarterbacks in college football right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's certainly one of the top, and I would have him at 4 or 5 here as well. Number 5, I think, is a good placement for him. And you mentioned it, fearless when it comes to trying to make any throw on the field. Sometimes a little bit too fearless. You mentioned a gunslinger, the turnover-worthy plays, and I think the other thing that gets me with Nussmeier is once you get him beyond that first read and once things start to get late in the play and he has to improvise, there's just not a whole lot of that. There's not a ton of mobility. He's a classic pocket quarterback who needs to release the football in 3 seconds or less to really have success, right? You're not going to get a whole lot of improv like you used to with Jaden Daniels, but when you talk about the load that was thrown at him last year, 2nd most pass attempts in the country behind Kyle McCord, LSU maybe asked him to do a little bit too much, and he was still really successful when you look at what he could do on that offense without much of a running game, without their defense helping him really the last 2 years. That's been the case for LSU. So a lot of it's going to be supporting cast. 4 of his starting offensive linemen were taken in the NFL draft, so I do worry a little bit about pass protection here. But as far as Nussmeier goes, got an NFL arm. You can see NFL anticipation at times from the pocket, especially when he really locks in and wants to throw balls into those tight windows, which is pretty often. So, look, Nussmeier's got a high ceiling. He could put up huge numbers again this year. The question to me, more so than him, is about his supporting cast. It's going to be about this offensive line, some new receivers, Barryon Brown, Nick Anderson, guys like that LSU's bringing in. They lost Mason Taylor at tight end, who's a really valuable piece, obviously. So I just think when you look at Nussmeier, and there's even a couple other guys on this list we're going to talk about the same way the next couple, it's what is around him, how much can they support him, because he's not going to be one of these dynamic athletes who's going to carry you like Jaden Daniels used to when things break down. When things break down, life gets a lot harder for him, right? And I love the way he throws through the pocket. I love the way his process. You could even see times, you mentioned 3 years as a backup, played sparingly, but you saw his process get a little bit better each year, right? So I think he's always going to have that gunslinger mentality. I think he kind of has to. That's the thing that could make him special, but I do worry a little bit about what's around them. LSU's gotten a lot of transfers in there this year, but they have to gel pretty quickly because I believe that they have a tough of course they have a tough first game. They have to go to Clemson week 1.
Oh, that's a brutal first game.
I mean, they have with basically
man, think about that. That offensive line against that defense
with a brand new offense around them, they got to go to Clemson week 1. That's right. That's going to be arguably the biggest game of week 1 or one of them, other than Ohio State, Texas.
When we do that preview, because we always do the matchup to watch on each side of the ball, is absolutely can LSU's offensive line survive against Clemson's defense?
Yeah.
That might be the best D-line in the country, and that's the brand new offensive line going against that D-line.
And if he finds a way to go in there and win that game, all of a sudden the Garrett Nussmeier hype is going to be off the rails. So look, that's one of a few games, and we got a stacked week 1 this year, don't we? That's one of a few games in week 1 that I can't wait to watch. But no, Nussmeier, certainly the talent's all there, especially from the pocket. Just got to reel it in sometimes a little bit more, and hopefully LSU's supporting cast can help him out.
I will say the offensive line is a major question mark, probably the biggest question mark for LSU going into next year, losing all those talented guys to the NFL draft, including Will Campbell, the number 4 overall pick. The receiving core I still think is really good, right? You got Aaron Anderson coming back for another year. You mentioned Barryon Brown. You mentioned Nick Anderson as well. You also have Trades Green, who was the top tight end coming out of high school last year and showed some really encouraging signs as a true freshman. So he's your tight end as a true sophomore as well. So I think the receiving core, Caden Durham going to sophomore year as well, very talented running back. I think the supporting cast in terms of skill position players is really good. The offensive line is a big question right now. And I think, listen, Garrett is a tough quarterback in the pocket. He's capable of making throws under pressure, but you don't want him under pressure all the time as well. So Garrett Nussmeier, number 5 on this list. Another guy who was supporting cast questions, number 4, Drew Allar from Penn State. Again, like Kevin Jennings, his final game of the year was not pretty. He had a 36.6 passing grade against Notre Dame in the college football playoff semifinals, but still, he led Penn State to the college football playoff semifinals this past year. He was the 6th most valuable quarterback in the country, according to PFF's wins above average metric. 21 big-time throws. It was top 20 in America. 2.1% turnover worthy play rate was 21st in the country. So did a really good job of making those NFL throws down the field, but also not putting the ball in harm's way, something he did an elite job at the year before as well. Still a lot to clean up, right? His footwork, his accuracy is still not the best right now for Drew Allar. Penn State did improve its wide receiver room this offseason. In fact, the entire starting 3 receivers should all be transfers. And Trevor Pena coming in from Syracuse, Kyron Hudson coming in from USC, and Devontae Ross coming in from Troy. But you lose Tyler Warren, who just went 14th overall to the Indianapolis Colts, was arguably the best tight end in college football this past year. That is a major loss because he really bailed out Penn State's offense in a lot of ways last year. So receiving core in terms of the receivers got better. Tight ends definitely got worse, losing Tyler Warren, but there's still some really talented tight ends in Penn State behind him. We'll see how that goes next year. But I think, with a loaded roster outside of that, returning around him and the defense and the offensive line returns a lot of pieces as well. And like I said, the receiving core did, I think, get better. I think Penn State has a potential to take even a deeper run next year, maybe even all the way to the national championship game.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, do we think they might be the favorite to win the Big Ten? We can get into that later as we get into the Penn State preview. But I'll be honest with you, I think Drew Allar might be the quarterback on this list that I have the hardest time with. I have the hardest time with placing because we know all of the things Penn State has. A really good defense, 2 really good backs. Andy Kotelnicki, one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. And Allar, when he throws the ball with conviction, boy, it's nice, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, you just talk about a guy with an absolute rifles, got that thick-legged kind of Andrew Luck build. He's not as athletic as Andrew Luck, but I think to me he throws the football kind of in a similar way, and he's got an absolute cannon, especially when you're talking about throwing down the middle of the defense. Nobody in the country, Max, had more completions, yards, and touchdowns on seam routes than Drew Allar did last year, and it wasn't particularly close. This is what they do, is they get down the middle of the field. That's where he excels, is those balls right in front of him between the hashes. The questions are, you mentioned it, the 3 new receivers now, throwing through man coverage. You mentioned that Notre Dame game. That was the problem. The receivers just locked down in man coverage, and Drew had to force throws into tight coverage, and it wasn't pretty. And then throwing more outside the numbers, expanding the width of the field, because I think that's where his footwork gets to him, especially that front foot that sometimes can be a little bit inconsistent when it comes to his motion, his delivery, his accuracy, throwing to the outer parts of the field, right? So if Penn State, I know they're losing Warren, But if they can expand their offense to where now they're going sideline to sideline and not just down the seams, you've got a whole different passing game and a whole different conversation with Drew Allar. But that's going to be the big key is those 3 receivers they brought in. I know you're super excited about Trevor Pena coming in from Syracuse, but Allar's got to find the chemistry with those guys, and then they've got to expand the field a little bit more than just right down the hash marks.
I will say, I think those stats you just said right there, but throwing down the seams, it's a lot to do with Tyler Warren, and not throwing well outside the numbers, a lot to do with the horrible receiving core for Penn State last year. So I think we'll see what happens this year for Penn State without Tyler Warren and with arguably better wide receivers this year. But he is a hard guy to place right now. And Drake Holiday even saying in the chat he's kind of out on Drew Allar right now. Walt even saying, I don't know about Drew Allar right now either. He's a hard guy to place right now, but we'll see what he could do next year with probably a better receiving core overall.
One thing we do know, and he has to be credited for this despite all the tight coverage he sees and despite all the pressure that he's under to perform, is he does not give the football away.
No.
2 years ago, 1.1% turnover-worthy play rate. Last year, 2.1%, which is still top 20 in the country. He doesn't beat himself. What beats Drew Allar is just throwing into those tight windows, in part because the receivers couldn't get open. And two, I still think his ball placement is definitely not elite, and he doesn't always throw the ball with 100% conviction. There's times it looks like, because he's got such a big arm, that he's trying to place it. I think that's the 2 things for me. It's just a little bit of footwork. It's not as drastic as a DJ Lagway or something like that, but the accuracy, the ball placement, and then just, again, those guys on the outside separating and giving him a little bit of help. But he does not give the football away. I know the Notre Dame game at the end, he had the interception at the end. That's not a common thing for Allar, okay? No. He spent all year not turning the ball over, and then, look, that game, you saw the best man coverage team in the country. It was as bad a matchup as you could get for Penn State's offense. So, if nothing else, there is a very high floor with Allar here, and that's why he deserves to still be in the top 5.
It's funny because he's not – usually guys who are not very accurate, like Drew Allar has some issues with accuracy at times. Usually they put the ball in harm's way a lot. It's almost like Drew's like, okay, it's either on target or it's nobody's catching the football either. So I think that's the one thing you say about Drew Allar as well. Again, physically talented, could be the number 1 overall pick in the draft if he develops even more in terms of his footwork and accuracy this upcoming year. But we'll see with Drew Allar. And listen, Penn State right now, a lot of people saying are the best team in the country. I, as a Penn State lifer, will not say that. I think they are top 5 team in the country right now, but I can't Jake's my Nittany Lions. But there is a guy on this list later on that I think will lead his team to a national title. We'll get to that in just a second. We have a lot of questions in the chat that we'll get to after I think we'll do this list over. Questions about Lenore Sellers, Fernando Mendoza, some guys like that. We'll get to that later on after I complete this list. So at number 3, and I think some people who are watching right now might turn this video off when I say this guy at number 3, but I want you to hear me out. It's Carson Beck from Miami. And now at Miami, coming in from Georgia, obviously. Beck was the top quarterback in the country entering the year last year. He was PFF's number 1 quarterback in America going into the year. Did not have the best year at Georgia this past year. I know that. But he had, of course, he had 20 turnover-worthy plays that were tied for the 6th most in the country. He was forcing the ball a lot last year because the Bulldogs, like Penn State, did not have a very good receiving core. You lost Brock Bowers, you lost Ladd McConkey, and they really, really missed them this past year. Still had an 80.2 passing grade this past year. And Georgia last year had 31 drops on the season. That was tied for the 2nd most in the Power 4. Over the last 2 years, Beck has a 90.9 passing grade, or PFF overall grade. 2nd best of any quarterback returning to college football right now. So going over to Miami, looking to have the same kind of bounce back like Cam Ward had, where he became the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Beck probably saw that and said, okay, maybe I could do the same thing there at Miami as well. I still think Carson Beck is one of the top quarterbacks in college football. I understand this past year was not very pretty at Georgia, but I think a lot of it had to do with the underwhelming receiving core they had at Georgia as well. He's still a very, very good quarterback in college football. And I think his last 2 years of work, and even this past year at Dalton, I don't think it was as bad as people think it was this past year. Carson Beck is still one of the top quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion.
Struggles in big moments because you mentioned the receiving core was down, and struggles at offensive tackle as well with the protection. That's where I want to go with this with Carson Beck. Look, when he's protected and conditions are ideal, he's as good as any quarterback in the country, a 90 clean pocket passing grade last year. When he's not protected, he's under pressure. There's not a whole lot of mobility, even less so than a guy I mentioned earlier in Garrett Nussmeier. Beck really does not move much. 30 passing grade under pressure. That's what it's going to be. If Miami can protect him consistently all year, just as they did for Cam Ward last year, Beck could be fantastic. Now, he's not going to improvise as much as Ward. I don't expect him to have necessarily a Cam Ward type of season because Ward had a Heisman-worthy season, and there was just a couple other guys ahead of him that were special in Hunter and Ginty. But you're talking about somebody who could succeed. And now look, let's be real, especially defensively aside from Clemson, you're taking a step down when it comes to the defenses you're facing every week from the SEC to the ACC. So as long as he's protected, he's a lightning-quick processor, he's accurate, he makes the throws, the delivery is clean, especially over the middle of the field. He throws the football really well and accurately. I just think that's what it comes down to is Georgia and maybe even their fans just didn't quite appreciate what they had in Carson Beck, and we'll find out with their quarterback situation with Gunnar Stockton or whoever what that might look like. But when Beck is clean, as good as anybody in the country, you just have to keep him clean often because there's not a whole lot of improvising that's going to happen with him. It's not going to be the same like it was with Cam Ward last year, but he can deliver strikes from the pocket when he is protected.
Yeah, I want to remind people again, this is a ranking of college football quarterbacks, not quarterbacks for the NFL draft next year. I think we had Beck a little bit lower in our draft rankings for next year.
6, maybe?
6, something like that.
6.
Yeah, so again, draft-wise, he's a little bit lower on this list, but college football-wise, next year, I still think Carson Beck is one of the elite quarterbacks in college football. Even Drake Holiday is in the chat saying, I see where you're coming from, but it's still gross to have Carson Beck this high, number 3.
If they protect him, he's going to have a good season. That's just what it comes down to. As much as anybody, you've compared him to, you've made the kind of Jared Goff comparison before where it's, look, you keep the pockets nice for him, he's going to make the right throw. And I think that's what everybody forgets in the midst of, okay, the interceptions against Texas, the first half against Alabama. But, look, there were other times, too. Georgia, they were right in that playoff race, really, until they lost to Ole Miss, right? And that game, what was that game? Jared Ivey, Princely Amon-Mielen just absolutely killing their offensive line. There's not much Beck could have done about that either.
Walt saying Beck going to Miami reminds me of McCord going to Syracuse. He hopes so. That would be pretty fantastic. Carson Beck right there.
Yeah, you go and set an ACC passing record, then all of a sudden people are talking about Beck a little bit nicer now, aren't they? See
absolutely. That? Yeah, absolutely. I love the Jared Goff comparison. I think, it's more – the comparison is almost more of Goff in the NFL is what Beck is in college. You give the guy a good supporting cast, he's one of the elite quarterbacks in college football. When it dies a little bit, that's when you start to see some of the warts from Carson Beck. At number 2, though, is our guy Drake's guy in the chat. It is Sam Leavitt from Arizona State. He was shockingly good this past year. I liked Sam Leavitt coming out of high school as a 4-star recruit, goes to Michigan State for a year, is a little bit there, transfers over to Arizona State. Arizona State goes from back-to-back 3-9 seasons to winning the Big 12 and making the college football playoff quarterfinals and almost beating Texas in that college football playoff quarterfinal game as well. Sam Leavitt, as a redshirt freshman, had an 89.1 overall grade, 9th among all quarterbacks in the country. Only Power 4 quarterback with 80-plus grades as both a passer and as a runner. Only a 1.1% turnover-worthy play rate. That was 4th among all quarterbacks in America. And he had 34 broken tackles as a runner. That was the 5th most for quarterbacks in the Power 4 as well. So Cam Scadaboo is gone now, but you still have Jordan Tyson, one of the best receivers in the country. That pairing, I think, right there is the best quarterback-wide receiver pairing we have in college football right now. Sam Leavitt, man, he showed that Texas game especially. He's an electric quarterback. He makes some plays out of structure that are very, very special. I like him a lot. As of right now, he's my number 2 quarterback in the country.
He's a big-time athlete with a big-time arm, and he's not even a finished product yet. This is another one where I look at his footwork within the pocket. Still could get a little bit better, but man, oh man, does he have athletic talent and arm talent. And I think one of the things that impressed me the most for is sometimes it looks like he can be reckless and even invite pressure a little bit using that athleticism and leaning on it a little too much. 1.1% turnover-worthy play rate. I believe it was only 5 or 6 turnover-worthy plays all season last year. And again, playing on the team, never started before, playing on the team that was projected to finish last in the Big 12, winning the Big 12, taking Texas down to the wire in the CFP quarterfinal, and now all of a sudden you head into this year with Arizona State expected to repeat as Big 12 champions. I mean, he's the reason, and now I think the fun part for me, didn't make a ton of big-time throws last year, only 13, but I look at him and I look at the emergence of Jordan Tyson, and I get shades of what Teteroa McMillan did the year before last, the second half of the season for Arizona, where it was like, hey, we need to watch this guy, right? And I think these two, when we said that about Fafita and McMillan back then, now I look at it like on the other side of the rivalry with Leavitt and Tyson, and I think the fun part is with Cam Scadaboo off to the NFL, he was the engine of this offense. No question about it. Leavitt played the best complementary role you could possibly play last year. Now with Scadaboo gone, and I know they got Kanye Udo in from Army, they've got Kyson Brown in the backfield as well, but Leavitt's now the engine. Leavitt's the centerpiece. He's the guy you're going to be looking at on every single play to run this offense for Kenny Dillingham, for Marcus Arroyo. And look, it's a quarterback-friendly offense, but Leavitt makes the big plays necessary that are really the X factor, especially when Tyson emerged down the stretch. So if Jordan Tyson is healthy and recovered from that shoulder injury, and Leavitt takes that next step in his development that he could, because he's got the arm and the legs to be the centerpiece of this offense, this could be a really fun season for Arizona State and for Sam Leavitt's NFL prospects as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Drake made a great point in the chat, too. Don't forget he went 12 for 17 for 219 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks against Iowa State in that Big 12 title game as well. And I'll even say, listen, Cam Scadaboo was a star of that Big 12 title game. He was outstanding against the Cyclones. Iowa State, though, has one of the best secondaries in America, and Sam Leavitt tore them apart in that game, too.
This team does not win the Big 12. Scadaboo's great. Scadaboo was going to be great the whole time. This team does not win the Big 12 without Leavitt. And I know Tyson didn't play against Iowa State and Texas, but they don't win the Big 12 without the second half emergence of Leavitt and Tyson together with that vertical threat.
Dude, if Jordan Tyson was healthy, I mean, they went to double overtime with Texas. They might have beaten Texas.
They might have beat Texas. Yeah. We will be left here wondering that the entire time, especially they were going into the playoff, you could argue, the hottest team in the country.
Yeah.
They really were, especially offensively. So they keep that together, and Tyson's healthy, and then they just add even a little bit more on defense, especially in the trenches down there. It's going to be fun to watch. And we're going to be talking about the Sun Devils a lot, especially with Leavitt running the show.
Absolutely. Sam Leavitt was really good against Texas in that college football playoff quarterfinal. A guy who was really good against Texas in the first round of the playoff, but also lost to them, is my number 1 quarterback in America. That is Cade Klubnik from Clemson. Dalton, I'll be honest with you. I am shocked I have Cade Klubnik this high on this list. If you told me last year Cade Klubnik would be my top returning quarterback in college football, I would have said you're crazy. I wasn't that big of a fan of Cade Klubnik based off the 2023 tape. But he was maybe the most improved quarterback in college football. Him and Jake Retzlaff, of course, as well. He was 102nd in the country in 2023 with a 63.9 passing grade, 5th in the country last year with an 87.7 passing grade. Only Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders had more passing touchdowns than Cade Klubnik last year, and both those guys obviously just got drafted into the NFL. Klubnik was 5th in the country in big-time throws as well with 28. This guy was the number 1 quarterback coming out of high school in 2022. Was not the best in his first year as a starter in 2023, but I think he was a great example of why do not judge guys immediately after 1 year as a starter in college football, because he really improved down the stretch this past season. I mentioned before, that Texas game. If you want to see why Cade Klubnik could be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, I know the size is not the best for Cade Klubnik. He shredded that Texas secondary, the best secondary, arguably the best defense in college football. He shredded them in that game with multiple NFL big-time throws in that game. That was a really impressive performance, and honestly, the entire season for Cade Klubnik was really impressive. Again, a shocking guy for me at number 1 overall, but Cade Klubnik, I just watched his tape back, I look at all the stats, I felt like he had to be number 1 quarterback.
I mean, the highest graded quarterback returning to college football from last season. You look at the trio of receivers he has in TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco, and Antonio Williams, the chemistry that he built with them as the season went on. And I think the bigger question for me with Clemson, more so than Klubnik, is just can they balance this thing out running the football? Yep. I think that's really the big question. The running game really kind of stalled at the end of last year. But as far as Klubnik goes, you mentioned it. I think 2 words come to mind to me when I watch him are touch and toughness. I think what he added after that Georgia game last year and the downfield accuracy, is one of the best vertical passers in college football. Got a little bit of gunslinger to him, just like Garrett Nussmeier does as well down there at LSU. And we'll see them facing each other in week 1. But I think you just see the arc and the layering that he puts on some of these vertical throws, and it's just terrific. I mean, the ball gets where it needs to be, and there's no chance for the safeties to get the angle on it and recover, right? So I think that's what you have. Still got to get beyond his first read, a little bit of one and run right now, and the other one is toughness. I mean, I think Klubnik, and this is something I don't think we've said enough, highest passing grade in the country under pressure last year.
Yep.
Okay, and I think his ability at times to make those vertical throws with people bearing down on him, Clemson's pass protection kind of came and went depending on their opponents sometimes last year. But Klubnik, look, he's tough. He's a great vertical passer. 36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions says it all last year. 28 big-time throws, like you mentioned. He's going to be among the national leaders in big-time throws again this year. He's going to get vertical. To me, it's just about, again, clean up the underneath stuff just a little bit, get to your second, third read, have a little bit more of a plan when you break the pocket. But I think considering what he showed us last year and the year that we're expecting Clemson to have, I think it is a worthy pick for number one right now. I completely understand it, and if nothing else, again, he's the highest graded quarterback returning to college football. That's a good thing to fall back on.
Hey, absolutely. You just mentioned that Texas game before as well. 81.8 passing grade against the Longhorns. He had 5 big-time throws and over 300 passing yards.
And that game was, I forget the exact score, but that game was dead in the water. And he almost actually brought them back. I think he got it to within 7. And
they lost by 14 total, but it was the closest game of any first-round game.
He got it to within 7, and then Jaden Blue took off in the fourth quarter to really put it away. But, I mean, no, he willed them back into that game when they were getting blown out in the first half.
Clemson's run D was the reason why they lost that game. Cade Klubnik was willing that team against again, an elite secondary. Texas had an elite defense overall. Cade Klubnik was under pressure a lot in the game. Again, remind you guys, watch that game for Cade Klubnik. That is the game to watch because he was fantastic in that game against Texas. But Cade Klubnik, my number one quarterback in college football going to next year. I want to answer some questions in the chat right now, Don, because we have a lot of them. Big one, of course, is Lenore Sellers. Did not have him in my top 10. What are your opinions on Lenore Sellers? And do you think he should have been in this top 10 list?
Borderline, very, very close. Like you had Talon Green at 11. I think, again, Sellers is probably top 15. You could argue him into the back end of this top 10. I think the big thing for me is it's actually a lot like DJ Lagway. Lagway was number 3 in deep passing grade last year. Sellers is one spot behind him. He's got all the tools in the world. There's zero question. I get the idea of people having him very high on NFL draft lists because at 242 pounds, the way he can run, the way he can break tackles, and then the absolute rifle of an arm. I mean, you talk about making a top 5 or 6 list of strongest arms in the country. Sellers is on that list, but got to fix the underneath accuracy. What we saw down the stretch last year was certainly encouraging. It was better. There are times he's just got to throw the ball on time, get it out, play point guard a little bit, but the big playability is there, just like Lagway, just like a couple other guys, even Nico that we talked about. All the talent in the world, got to clean it up underneath a little bit. That's going to be the big thing with Sellers. So, look, could he end up on the top 3 to 5 of this list at the end of the year? Absolutely. If the polish as a passer comes, absolutely. Just got to see it first because I think still only finished last year with a 70 passing grade.
Yes, around a 70 passing grade this past year. And again, I want to remind people this is a ranking of quarterbacks in college football, not a ranking for the 2026 NFL draft. If it was a ranking for the 2026 draft, Sellers probably would have been like top 5 or so on this list.
I think we might have had him 7th, if only, again, because we're really projecting as a passer right now. But, a lot of people would say that's too low. I understand it. The tools, no question about the tools. There's going to be a ton of pressure on him to win at South Carolina this year, and it's going to be about getting more well-rounded as a passer.
Just think of him like the Jalen Milroe, the Anthony Richardson type of quarterback in this year's draft. Just the outrageous physical tools, just got to refine a lot more. But you go back to that Clemson game even, he set the record for most broken tackles by a quarterback in that game against that elite Clemson defense. He had 15 broken tackles against Clemson in that game. And again, some of the throws he makes on tape, man, are outrageous, and nobody else, I think, in America can make those throws. But it's the refinement that you need right now. So for NFL draft prospect, yes, the North South should be in the top 10. But for college football just next year, I think there's more refined passers in college football. That's why I did not crack the top 10 on my list right there. I want to look at another one right there. We have from Jonathan Peck asking about Fernando Mendoza of Indiana. Big name right now for a lot of people in the NFL draft. Some people even have him at QB1 for this year's draft, Dylan. What did you think of Fernando Mendoza, and why do you think he should have been in the top 10 here, or what do you think about him?
Okay, so let me start with this. I would not have put him in the top 10. Maybe in the top 20 to 25 for me.
Now at Indiana, by the way. Transfer from Cal.
So let me start with the positives. I really like the fit for Mendoza at Indiana in this offense. RPO heavy, intermediate heavy, play action heavy in Kurt Cignetti's offense. I think he's going to play very well in Indiana's offense. I just don't see any of the special tools right now. Now, again, he needs better pass protection because Cal couldn't pass protect for anything last year. Yep. So he is tough. You saw him in the Miami game, got out to the big lead, and then almost tried to bring him back once they blew it. It's moments like that with Mendoza where you go, okay, this guy's got some moxie to him. But also through 2 years, really 1.5-ish as a starter, more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws. I think there's times he tries to force it. This is another one to me. There's not a whole lot of improvising with him, right? He can move around a little bit, but, kind of like Garrett Nussmeier where it's you don't see that special improv ability. So he's got to win from the pocket. He's got a quick release. He gets rid of the football. I think in an RPO-heavy scheme like he's going to in Indiana, he can succeed. I do think he's going to have a lot of success. Where the hype and the draft hype don't match up for me is I go, okay, even if he plays as well as Curtis Rourke did last year, Curtis Rourke got taken in the 7th round. And I actually don't think their skill sets are that different. I think that's why Curt Cignetti went out and got Mendoza to be pretty much the direct Curtis Rourke replacement. Now, I thought Rourke maybe, you could have convinced me he could have gone in round 4 or 5. I would have had no issue with that. But he ended up going in the 7th, again, for a lack of mobility. And in Rourke's case, a lack of health. You don't have that with Mendoza. But I'm slowing the hype train a little. And it's funny because I'm doing this measured slowing thing because I think Indiana's a really good fit for him. Throwing to Elijah Surratt, having Roman Hemby in the backfield. That Indiana's still going to be a darn good football team this year. I don't know about a playoff team, but they are going to be good with Mendoza at the helm. I just want to pump the brakes a little.
I'm with you.
Because we've seen solid from Mendoza at Cal, which was not the best situation, especially with their offensive line last year. I'm just not in on him with some of these other guys we have in our top 10 yet. If he goes out there and shreds it at Indiana and starts doing the same things Curtis Rourke did, maybe we can start talking about it. And even then, we got some decisions to make as a prospect because Curtis Rourke went in the 7th to San Francisco.
Yeah, definitely. Right now in his career, 27 big-time throws, 32 turnover-worthy plays. It's really hard for me when you have more turnover-worthy plays in your career than big-time throws to put you on a top 10 list. Just the decision-making for Fernando Mendoza is all over the place. He misses defensive backs. He misses linebackers a lot. That leads to a lot of turnover-worthy plays. I do think he's talented, and like Dalton said, I think going to that RPO-heavy scheme in Indiana is going to help him out a lot. He could have a big year at Indiana because of it, and he has very talented players around him in Indiana. I see a lot of the first-round talk right now for Fernando Mendoza, a lot of top 10 talk for Fernando Mendoza. I personally can't get on board with that right now. Now, maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe he becomes a top 10 pick, like a lot of people on Twitter think he can be. But I just think there are other quarterbacks I'd rather have than Fernando Mendoza right now. But there's he's certainly going a very good scheme in Indiana and should be helped out a lot better than he was at Cal this past year. Before we go, though, Dawn, do you agree with this list? What would you change with this list? Some of the order of the list? What do you think my top 10 list?
No, I think it's a solid list. I might consider Arch a little bit higher. That's the one for me. And would you put him above Allar and Nussmeier and Beck then? I might put him 3rd. Yeah, that might be a thought where I hedge it. Maybe number 1's a little bit of a stretch, especially with the year Klubnik had last year and the year we think Leavitt's going to have at ASU. But Arch. He's him and Lagway are the hard ones, and I'm in on Arch. I'm a little more cautious with Lagway, where it's interesting the inconsistent between because deep ball variance happens. We see this all the time from quarterbacks who have now not that he can't throw the deep ball any week that he wants, but you talk about deep ball variance and what if that's taken away? Okay, what are our answers here? Like Arch, I don't have that issue with because I've seen him go through the process, and even with what's on tape, he works the process. He works defenses, right? Lagway's the one. I look at the end of the year. Maybe I'm wrong in these top 3. I need to see it. I feel like I need to see it more with Lagway, despite what he did show us a lot last year. He did. But he also showed us a lot of inconsistent last year. So I'm just waiting for that play-to-play consistency with Lagway. They're the two most interesting ones to me on this whole list. Why I want to put them back-to-back on the list is because Arch only has 2 games against bad competition. Like Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State is not very good competition. So if you're shredding those teams, like that's what you should be doing out there. So that's why he wasn't a little bit higher. Lagway, if you put Arch on the list, I feel like you have to put Lagway on the list because he was a true freshman last year in the SEC. Still, almost a 70 passing grade in the SEC as a true freshman is really good, right? So I think that's another thing too. Is like you got to for these lists a lot. I always have age in mind as well. So one guy might have an 80 passing or a 75 passing grade who's a 7th-year senior or whatever like that, versus Lagway is like a 65 passing grade as a true freshman in the SEC. I'm going to go with Lagway because I think there's more potential there with Lagway going to the year. And that's the fun part of this is there's so many guys. I mean, you look at Leavitt, look at Arch, Lagway, Nico, Kevin Jennings, even to an extent Cade Klubnik with the breakout year that he had. So many guys that have only given us 1 year or less of that big-time production or flashes of that big-time production that we do. I mean, this is, as much as any list that we've done, this is one where we've really had to project a lot because what is it? Beck and Allar, and I guess you could consider Pavia from New Mexico State as well, are the only guys that we've seen start for 2 years and have success for 2 years. The rest of this, we're projecting a lot here, but I think that's the thing with Arch and Lagway is You're going to get a lot of arguments about both of them, possibly over the next 2 years, and maybe even a which one is better sort of thing. But Lagway, for me, I do need to see the down-to-down consistency, for sure.
Any other guys that we did not talk about you think should be mentioned here? I think Dante Moore could have a huge year at Oregon. They've had back-to-back Heisman finalists at quarterback and Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel. He could have a big year there.
Dante Moore is one worth mentioning. I think Jake Retzloff really is, all jokes aside, is one worth mentioning that I think is probably a top 15 guy, and there's a lot going back to BYU. I think Moore is one to speculate about. I'm curious. You know me. I'm very high on Alabama this year. I'm curious. We think it's going to be Ty Simpson for now until we hear any further. I'm curious if Kalen DeBoer, if he can really get Simpson going as a more traditional pocket passer than Milroe was, that could be dangerous. You got Ryan Williams and all his weapons they got down there. I'm looking at loaded too. You know me. I've been spending all spring looking at Alabama and their quarterback situation, going, it's a thought.
Former 5-star Ty Simpson too.
I think they're a national title contender that not enough people are talking about. I really do.
Right.
You've got some other interesting ones in the Big 12. One more I'm going to throw out there. I think Miller Moss is going to have a fun year at Louisville.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great fit.
Jeff Brom, Miller Moss. I think that's one that's going to be a lot of fun. He's going to have a big year, and it's just a matter of if they can put their defense back together.
And listen, we've done a lot of projecting with Arch Manning and DJ Lagway like that. I'm not projecting Bryce Underwood in the top 10, but there's no denying that kid is unbelievably talented. I will say, though,
they need weapons.
That Michigan offense still has the same question marks outside of quarterback they did the year before. That receiving core, that offensive line, no idea how they're going to look offensively next year, but they did bring in one of the highest-rated quarterbacks of all time out of high school in Bryce Underwood. So, again, I'm not putting a high school senior in my top 10 returning quarterbacks in college football, but he's going to be a really fun guy to watch next year over at Michigan. But thank you guys for watching. We got more of these top 10 positional videos coming out with our running backs coming out next on this channel. We appreciate all you guys in the chat hanging out with us right here on this channel. Of course, we're back to being the PFF College Football Show, which I'm very excited to do with you guys as well. For Eli back there, for Dalton Wassman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys very soon with my top 10 running backs in college football entering the 2025 season.